The air in the quiet suburban neighborhood was suddenly pierced by a chilling sound, a dog's desperate whimper. It shattered the serene Tuesday morning, coming from behind the tall wooden fence of 42 Maple Street. Jake, a local garbage collector, was finishing his rounds when the sound froze him in his tracks. It wasn't the bark of an excited pet or the howl of a lonely dog. This was different, urgent, pleading. Jake's curiosity turned to concern. He was running behind schedule, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, he unlatched the gate and stepped into the backyard. What he saw made his heart stop. In the middle of the yard lay a large black Labrador, rigid with fear, a massive snake coiled tightly around her body. Its scales shimmered in the sunlight, and its muscular form left no doubt about its strength. Jake would later learn it was a python, an escaped exotic pet over 6 feet long. The Labrador, Luna, trembled beneath the snake's grip, her wide eyes filled with fear. She let out another whimper as Jake stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Then his gaze shifted to a heartbreaking sight. 3 black Labrador puppies huddled nearby, their tiny whimpers echoing their mother's distress. Jake's chest tightened. This wasn't just a dog in peril, it was a mother protecting her young. Jake considered calling for the dog's owner, Mrs. Allison, but dismissed the idea. The elderly woman, frail and in her late 70s, would be helpless in this situation. Why add to her anguish? Luna's brown eyes locked onto Jake's, filled with a determination that sparked him into action. He fumbled for his phone and dialed 911. "I need help. There's a snake wrapped around a dog, and there are puppies too," he stammered. As he hung up, Jake's eyes darted around the yard, desperate for something to help. His attention landed on a garden hose, and an idea began to form. Maybe spraying the snake with water would disorient it. He grabbed the hose, his hands trembling, as the sound of approaching sirens grew louder. The wail of sirens broke the tense silence, but their arrival startled the snake. It began tightening its coils around Luna's body. The Labrador's calm resolve crumbled as her eyes filled with pain, her labored breathing a desperate struggle against the snake's constricting grip. Jake's heart sank as Luna whimpered softly, her trembling body showing signs of exhaustion. 2 uniformed officers entered the yard swiftly but cautiously. "Sir, please step back," the lead officer, a woman with short gray hair, instructed firmly. Jake obeyed, backing away as the officers assessed the situation. The younger officer, Tim, approached with a long pole equipped with a loop. "We need to act fast," the lead officer said, her expression grim. "That snake's putting too much pressure on her rib cage." Tim nodded. "I'll try to secure the snake's head. If I can get it under control, we can loosen its grip without harming the dog." As Tim moved closer, the snake's head rose, its tongue flicking out, sensing the threat. With a swift, calculated movement, Tim slipped the loop over the snake's head. "Got it!" he exclaimed, holding the pole steady. The lead officer knelt beside Luna, speaking softly. "Hold on, girl. You're doing great." Slowly, they began unwinding the snake's powerful coils. Luna's breathing eased slightly with each coil removed. Finally, with a final careful maneuver, the snake was completely separated from her. Tim quickly secured it in a specially designed container. However, the snake's muscular body writhed violently, and for a moment, it almost broke free. What happened next stunned everyone. Luna, who had been barely conscious moments ago, suddenly surged to her feet. Her eyes, fierce and unyielding, locked onto the snake. With a burst of adrenaline, she lunged forward, clamping her jaws onto the snake's tail. Luna shook her head furiously, trying to rip the snake apart. The snake thrashed wildly in Tim's grip, caught between its captor and Luna's powerful jaws. But Luna's strength gave out as quickly as it had come. She released the snake and collapsed onto the ground, her body trembling from sheer exhaustion. Tim seized the moment to fully secure the snake, locking it inside the container. The lead officer immediately turned her attention to Luna. "We need to get her to a vet now," she said firmly. Jake dropped to his knees beside Luna, gently stroking her head. "Oh, Luna," he murmured, his voice filled with awe and concern. Her breathing was shallow and her body trembled with exhaustion. The lead officer stood up, her face etched with urgency. That last burst of energy might have worsened any internal injuries. We need to get her checked immediately." Jake nodded, but suddenly remembered the puppies. "What about her puppies?" he asked anxiously. The officer glanced at the pen where the 3 small Labrador puppies were huddled together, whimpering softly. "The puppies seem fine," she assured him. "They're too young to be moved unnecessarily. Can someone stay here to look after them?" Jake nodded firmly. "I'll take care of them until you return." As the officers carefully loaded Luna into the animal control van, Jake couldn't help but marvel at her bravery. Even in her distress, her eyes never left her puppies, a mixture of concern and longing in her gaze. As the van doors closed, Jake knew what he had to do next: inform Mrs. Allison. Jake approached the front door of the small house, his heart heavy with the weight of the news. He rang the doorbell, and after a moment, Mrs. Allison appeared. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and her eyes still carried the weariness of sleep. "Jake?" she said, confused but curious. Taking a deep breath, Jake recounted the harrowing events, watching as Mrs. Allison's face turned pale. When he finished, she leaned against the doorframe, visibly shaken. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "Poor Luna. I can't believe this happened." Jake reassured her. The officers said she seemed stable, but they needed to take her to the vet to be sure. "They left the puppies here, though, and I'll stay to look after them if you'd like." Mrs. Allison composed herself, her expression softening with determination. "No, I'll take care of them. It's the least I can do after everything you've done." She followed Jake to the backyard, where the puppies were still whimpering. Kneeling by their pen, she gently soothed them, her presence a calming balm for their distress. Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to see a call from Michael, his work partner. Jake answered the call, trying to keep his voice steady. "Hey, Michael. Where are you, man?" Michael asked, his tone a mix of concern and impatience. "I'm at the junction waiting for you. Everything okay?" Jake glanced at Mrs. Allison, who was gently stroking the puppies. He hesitated, torn between his responsibility to his job and the need to ensure everything was settled. "Yeah, I'm okay," he finally said. "There was an emergency with a neighbor's dog, but it's under control now. I'll be there in a few minutes." Hanging up, Jake turned back to Mrs. Allison. "I have to go now. My partner is waiting for me. Will you be okay with the puppies?" Mrs. Allison looked up, her expression calm but resolute. "We'll manage, Jake. Thank you for everything. Please go on. I'll call you if there's any news about Luna." Jake nodded, giving the puppies one last glance before hurrying out of the yard. As he jogged toward the junction where Michael waited, his mind raced with emotions. The image of Luna, brave and protective even in the face of danger, was etched in his memory. He fervently hoped she would recover and reunite with her puppy soon. Later that evening, Jake couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The events of the day replayed in his mind. The terrifying sight of Luna trapped in the python's coils, her desperate attempt to protect her puppies, and the sheer determination she displayed despite her exhaustion. He found himself marveling at the unpredictability of nature. Animals, with their raw instincts and hidden strengths, often surprised humans with their courage and resilience. As Jake settled in for the night, he couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary bond between Luna and Mrs. Allison. For the elderly widow, Luna was more than a pet. She was a source of comfort, purpose, and companionship. Seeing Luna fight so valiantly to survive and protect her puppies only deepened Jake's respect for the strength and loyalty of animals. Nature, Jake thought, truly has a way of reminding us of life's incredible and unpredictable beauty. The next morning, Jake's first thought was of Luna. He decided to check in on Mrs. Allison and the puppies after his shift. When he arrived at 42 Maple Street, Mrs. Allison greeted him at the door, her face lined with worry but lit with hope. "The vet called," she began before Jake could ask. "Luna is stable, but she'll need to stay under observation for a few days. They're checking for internal injuries, but they're optimistic." Jake felt a wave of relief. "That's good news. She's a fighter, Mrs. Allison." Mrs. Allison smiled faintly. "She is, isn't she? And it's all thanks to you and those officers. If you hadn't been there..." Her voice faltered, but she quickly composed herself. "Would you like to see the puppies?" Jake followed her to the backyard, where the three small Labrador puppies were playing, their earlier fear replaced by the innocent energy of youth. They tumbled over each other, their tiny tails wagging furiously. Jake crouched down to pet them, their soft fur a comforting reminder that life goes on. "They've been restless," Mrs. Allison said softly. "They miss their mother, but they're eating and seem healthy." She paused, her voice tinged with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough, Jake. You didn't just save Luna, you saved this little family." Jake shook his head. "I just did what anyone would have done. Luna did most of the work herself. She's incredible." As the days passed, the neighborhood rallied around Mrs. Allison and her puppies. Neighbors dropped by with food and supplies, and children played with the puppies, bringing some much-needed joy to the household. News of Luna's bravery spread, and soon she became a local hero. People marveled at the Labrador's courage and the bond she shared with her owner and her puppies. When Luna finally returned home, the reunion was nothing short of heartwarming. The moment she stepped into the yard, her puppies rushed to her, tails wagging and tiny bodies bouncing with excitement. Luna, though still weak, wagged her tail and licked each of her pups, her love and relief evident in every gentle gesture. Mrs. Allison's eyes filled with tears as she knelt beside them, her hand resting on Luna's head. The sight of Luna back with her puppies brought tears to Jake's eyes. Standing nearby, he couldn't help but feel immense pride in having played a part in their survival. The bond between Luna and her family was unbreakable, a testament to the strength of love and instinct. Mrs. Allison turned to Jake, her voice trembling with gratitude. "I'll never forget what you did for us. Luna and the puppies wouldn't be here without you." Jake smiled, his humility shining through. "It wasn't just me. It was Luna's will to protect her family. She's the real hero." Life on Maple Street slowly returned to normal, but the memory of that day lingered in everyone's minds. Luna's story became a symbol of resilience and the extraordinary lengths animals go to for those they love. She continued to recover, her strength returning bit by bit. The neighborhood children were thrilled to see her back on her usual walks with Mrs. Allison, the puppies in tow. One evening, Jake sat on his porch, reflecting on the events. Nature, with all its unpredictability, had shown its duality, both danger and the triumph of courage. Luna's unwavering bravery had left a mark on him, reminding him of the power of instinct, determination, and love. As he watched the sun set over the neighborhood, Jake thought about how close they had come to losing Luna. The snake's grip could have been her end, but instead she had emerged as a symbol of hope and strength. He smiled, knowing that he had witnessed something truly remarkable. Animals often surprise us, Jake thought. Just when we think we understand them, they reveal a hidden depth of courage and love. It's a reminder of how much we can learn from them if we pay attention. And so life went on at 42 Maple Street, with Luna and her puppies thriving under Mrs. Allison's care. The story of Luna's bravery spread far beyond the quiet suburban neighborhood, inspiring all who heard it.